Welcome back to the channel, Crypto Trend Trader here. Today we're going to be taking a look at Bitcoin. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you it's not financial advice. I'm not your financial advisor. These markets are extremely volatile, so please do your own research and trade responsibly. So we got basically a bunch of downside pressure since our last video. Essentially what happened was, we got the sell-off like we were talking about, and then essentially got the push up. And it didn't quite make it to the area we were targeting up here at 7,800 at the 200 moving average and our resistance line here. But we basically got such a strong rejection. I mean, it should have been very clear to anyone by the size of the wick that we were not going to be continuing to the upside, obviously. Not to mention when the 4-hour closed as a red body, obviously it was indication that we had in fact gotten rejection to the upside, and that we'd be getting continuation to the downside. So yeah, that was probably the rally. I mean, essentially getting faded and just putting in another series of lower highs, as it essentially just looks like at this point in time we're going to come back down here and test this long-term trend line. And if you see, that's that same line we've been talking about. Goes from all the way down here, $110, and just touches the bottoms all the way up from one bear market to the next at the $3,000 range over here, and basically walks the price up in the same way that it essentially did through this area in here. And then as we get near to where we're at now, you'll see the first time that we hit it, we did in fact get that bounce. Very powerful move. So at this point in time, what I would expect to happen is us to come down here and essentially touch that 55 and this right here, and hope it holds at 68.76. So another test down to the high 6,000 range. Looks like it's in the cards. On the weekly, we did basically get the rejection on the Jewel Thief. TJD Jewel Thief came up. The blue got rejected by the purple. And we did get a little bit of a knife stick out the bottom here. Not the best signal, not the clearest, but it did give us a nice move, obviously, off of that knife signal. But at this point in time, what it looks like is going to happen is it looks like we're going to get one more stab down and attempt to break this. What I would like to see is I would like to see a wick come down through here and then still get a close above it, because I think that would give the market a little bit of an indication, that we could potentially move to the upside. But I mean, at this point in time, it's looking more and more evident like we're coming back down to test this 65.80 range, and then most likely down to the 5,500 range, and that's going to fall in line basically with with our fib levels again. We're looking for these interactions between fib levels, and the best way to picture these is essentially like ball kind of like bouncing around in between these fib levels, and then eventually it hits a level enough times it breaks through it, like kind of like that old game Super Breakout. Every time like the ball would hit it, it would bust away like the brick, but some bricks you would have to hit more than one time. That's kind of how like the support and the resistance is. Each time the ball hits it, it gets a little weaker. The difference is that you just don't know exactly when that brick's going to break. You don't know if it's going to take one hit and it breaks through, or you don't know if it's going to have to hit it 10 times and then it fails to act as resistance or support. But essentially that's what's happening is we come down to these flat level resistances just like we did with capitulation, and you hit it, you get the bounce, and it just gets lower and lower and lower, and then finally there's just nothing left and you break through and get that capitulation. And essentially that's kind of what we had happen in this situation. We had this little support zone right here, and then when it failed, we basically just dropped down, and then we find the new support zone right here, and that lines up exactly with the 0.5 where we got that previous touch to. I mean, at this point in time, I think the most likely, and you'll see the colorful one over here, that one is just taking into account like regular pricing, not percentage, the same way that log scale does, as where the rest of these are in log scale, because that's how I obviously look at the chart because of the massive moves. But I do like to keep both in mind, because I know people do look at both. But at this point in time, it looks very likely that we're going to come down here to the 618 of the non-log scale fib, and that's going to line up perfectly with the 786 of the log scale fib, and also that resistance that we had previously experienced on the way up here, and probably one of the only substantial levels that we created on the way up here. You know what I mean? There's only like 3 or 4 along the way. So I mean, it looks like we're coming back down here to 54.66. But again, once we break under this white trend line, I mean, we're potentially putting like the bull market trend in jeopardy. And then that's when you start looking at like, potentially coming back down to like new lower lows. And, you start, Bitcoin at this point in time is starting to do stuff that it hasn't done before. So it's important to, keep that in mind, because typically what people do is they compare previous results to, current patterns and look for, an educated guess on what's going to happen. But the fact of the matter is no one knows if the market's going up or down. You just basically are making educated guesses based on, whatever indicators or oscillators or chart patterns or resistance or whatever it is that you use that you've identified as your market edge. You're essentially just using that, to make an educated guess is what it comes down to. But in all reality, I mean, it looks like we're coming straight back down here. We essentially moved up, got rejected, and if this doesn't hold, that's going to line right up with the 200s down here at 49.43. By the time these come up here, by the time we get this dump down here, I mean, say we go on for a couple more months, you know what I mean, and coming into March or whatever, the 200 moving averages are going to be right in this area, and that's going to line up perfectly, around that time. Now, it doesn't have to be March. We could immediately dump down here and tag the 200s, you know what I mean, and then just get a close above this. But honestly, I would expect a big, big reaction, from the area that turns out to be the bottom. So, if we do sell off past that parabolic trend line and come down here and test this area, I want to see a strong, basically rejection of lower prices. Or, I'm just going to assume that this is not done. And again, we're looking for an indication that the trend is reversing. And as of now, there's nothing even close to an indication the trend is reversing. Matter of fact, I mean, you could argue that it's actually starting to re-strengthen to the downside. So that's the first area that we're looking for a reaction. And again, that's going to line up perfectly with the parabolic SAR. Essentially like come down here, potentially tag that, flip it red, get a little bounce, come back, get rejected in this area off the 377, and then potentially sell off the lower prices. But again, that's my guess based on how this looks right now. You can see the blue is already like curling back down, and it's going to cross back over the purple here shortly. Knife is selling off powerfully. We didn't even get that green to come up above. We didn't even get the knife to come up above near the peak over here, which basically just means we were extremely weak to the upside. But I mean, we could still literally come down here, touch right in this area, get the bounce, and then finally come up here and put in a higher high, and potentially move back up to like 8,500 or 9,300, and that would throw the whole market for a loop, get people in here buying again, get people bullish again, talking about that's it, it's over, we're going to higher prices, and then all that does create liquidity for the whales to essentially like sell into, because you got to find interest. And at this point in time, I mean, it's clear based on the chart that we are in fact running out of buyers or running out of suckers, and that's why you see these massive moves like this. In order to hold the price from going down, they have to move the price up quickly, because people are going to be selling into it like immediately. So you have to move it up real quickly with massive buys like that, because if you try to stair step it up, there's just going to be more selling, and you're just going to end up falling off a cliff and losing. So, well, there we have it, guys. Crypto trend trader, a little bit of Bitcoin technical analysis. Obviously, still bearish. Could get a move to the upside. We'll see what happens. Last video, it turns out I was right on both ends. We did get the powerful move up and then the powerful move down. So I thought that was kind of funny. Crypto trend trader, signing off.